Asterisk, asterisk. Poor Virginia guy saves drowning California girl. Unexpectedly, she is a millionaire daughter. Asterisk, asterisk. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. In a small, quiet town in Virginia, a young man named Jake was walking along the banks of a river. The sky was overcast, and a light drizzle had started to fall, making the air crisp and cool. Jake, a 23-year-old who had spent most of his life working on his family's farm, was no stranger to hard work and the slow pace of life in the countryside. He was tall and lean, his hands rough from years of manual labor. Despite the challenges of life, Jake was always positive and ready to lend a helping hand whenever needed. On this particular afternoon, however, Jake was out for a walk to clear his mind. It had been a tough few months. His family was struggling to make ends meet, and he had been doing everything he could to help. As he walked along the riverbank, lost in thought, he heard a scream that cut through the air, breaking his focus. Without hesitation, Jake sprinted toward the sound, his heart pounding in his chest. When he reached the river's edge, he saw a young woman struggling in the water. Her arms flailed as she was pulled by the current, and the panic in her eyes was unmistakable. Without thinking twice, Jake dove into the cold, murky water, fighting the current as he swam toward her. The woman's frantic movements made it harder for Jake to reach her, but he was determined. His strong arms finally grabbed hold of her, and with all his strength, he pulled her toward the shore. The woman was limp in his arms, her face pale and her breathing shallow. Jake didn't waste a moment. He managed to drag her out of the water, his heart racing as he checked for signs of life. Thankfully, she coughed up water and gasped for air. Jake sat back on the wet grass, catching his breath, as the woman slowly regained consciousness. She looked up at him, confused and disoriented. "Are you all right?" Jake asked gently, his voice calm but filled with concern. The woman blinked a few times before nodding weakly. I think so. Thank you," she whispered. Jake smiled at her, relieved to see she was okay, but something about her stood out. Despite the wet clothes and the messy hair plastered to her face, she had an air of elegance. She was clearly not from around here. "Where are you from?" Jake asked, still catching his breath. "California," she replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm Mia. I was just visiting," she trailed off, looking around as if unsure of what to say next. Jake could tell she was shaken, but he didn't press her. He helped her to her feet, offering her his jacket to keep warm. They sat together in silence for a few moments, the rain continuing to fall around them. Mia took a deep breath, finally speaking again. "I don't know what happened. I've never been so scared in my life." Jake nodded, understanding. The current can be pretty strong here, even if you don't realize it at first. He glanced at her again, noticing how out of place she looked. Her clothes were expensive, and she had a polished look to her, even in this messy situation. "You're lucky I was here," Jake said with a small smile, still trying to keep the mood light. Mia smiled back, but there was a glimmer of something deeper in her eyes. "I'm lucky you were here," she repeated, her gaze softening. Jake didn't know it then, but this encounter would change both of their lives forever. The rain had eased into a mist by the time Jake helped Mia back to the narrow dirt road that wound through the trees toward town. She was still trembling from the cold, clutching his jacket tightly around her shoulders. Jake's truck was parked nearby, an old blue Ford with faded paint and a dented bumper, but it started up with a rough cough that sounded like an old man clearing his throat. "Hop in," he said, holding the door open for her. She hesitated for a moment, glancing around as if she still could not believe what had just happened, then climbed in quietly. The heater blew lukewarm air as they drove, and for a while, neither spoke. The sound of the windshield wipers filled the silence between them. Finally, Mia broke it. "You live around here?" she asked, her voice still soft, almost uncertain. "Born and raised," Jake replied, keeping his eyes on the road. "It's a small place, not much changes." She looked out the window, watching the mist drift over the fields. "It's beautiful," she said after a while. Jake smiled faintly. "It's quiet. That's what most people like about it." He glanced at her. "What about you? California, right? Must be a big difference." Mia gave a weak laugh. "Yeah, a little. I came here for a break. Needed to get away for a bit." Jake nodded but did not pry. He could tell there was more to her story, but it was not his place to ask. After a few miles, he pulled up to a small farmhouse with peeling white paint and a porch that creaked when you stepped on it. "You can warm up inside," he offered. "My mom won't mind." Mia looked at the modest house, unsure. "I don't want to intrude," she said quickly. "You're not," Jake replied gently. "You just almost drowned. I think you've earned a cup of coffee." Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and coffee. The walls were lined with old photos and shelves of books that looked well read. Jake's mother, a kind-faced woman in her 50s, appeared in the doorway, drying her hands on a towel. "Jake, who's this?" she asked, surprise flickering in her eyes. "This is Mia," Jake explained. "She fell into the river. I brought her here to warm up." His mother's expression softened immediately. "Oh, you poor thing," she said kindly. "Sit down, dear. I'll get you a blanket." Mia smiled shyly. "Thank you, ma'am." She sat on the edge of the couch, her fingers still gripping the jacket. When the warmth of the blanket wrapped around her shoulders, she let out a shaky breath, finally starting to relax. Jake's mother poured coffee for both of them, setting the mugs on the table. "You're lucky Jake was out there," she said with a mother's pride. "That river's taken a few folks over the years." Mia looked at Jake, her eyes full of gratitude. "I don't even know how to thank you," she said softly. Jake shrugged, trying to brush it off. "You don't have to. Anyone would have done the same." His mother chuckled. "Maybe, but not everyone jumps into a freezing river without thinking twice." Jake smiled sheepishly, and Mia laughed for the first time since the accident, the sound light and clear. The tension in the room eased. Later, after his mother had gone to bed, Jake walked Mia out to the porch. The rain had stopped completely, and the moonlight spilled across the fields, casting everything in a silver glow. Crickets chirped in the distance. "Are you sure you'll be all right?" he asked. "Yeah," Mia nodded. "My rental cabin isn't far. I'll call a friend to pick me up in the morning." She hesitated, then added, "I really mean it, Jake. You saved my life." Jake looked down, his hands in his pockets. "Just glad I was there." Mia studied him for a moment, something unreadable in her eyes. "Most people would have kept walking," she said quietly. "You didn't." He shrugged again, embarrassed. "I couldn't just do nothing." She smiled, stepping closer. "Well, I owe you one," he chuckled. "Guess I'll hold you to that." As she turned to leave, Jake watched her walk down the gravel path, her figure framed by the soft moonlight. There was something about her graceful but grounded, fragile yet strong. He could not explain it, but he felt that their paths had crossed for a reason. When her car's headlights disappeared in the distance, Jake stood for a moment in the cool night air, his heart steady but his mind restless. Somewhere deep down, he knew that this was not the last time he would see the girl from California. And in a way, that thought made the quiet Virginia night feel a little warmer. The next few days passed in a quiet haze for Jake. He returned to his usual routine of farm work, but his thoughts often drifted back to Mia. He had saved her life, but something about her lingered in his mind. Her soft smile, her graceful presence, and that sense of quiet strength she carried with her. Despite the large difference in their worlds, something had sparked between them that day by the river. Mia, on the other hand, couldn't seem to shake the memory of Jake. After her dramatic escape from the river, she had spent the rest of the night thinking about the man who had rescued her. She had no idea how to repay him for what he had done, but she knew she had to find a way. It wasn't just the physical act of saving her, it was the way he had looked at her with such quiet understanding, as if he saw more than just the rich girl from California. She had never met anyone like him before. Over the next week, Mia couldn't stop thinking about him. She made a decision. She would find Jake again. She had to see him, thank him properly, and maybe even get to know him better. She called the local hotel where she had rented a cabin, asking if they could help her find him. The receptionist, who knew everyone in town, gave her Jake's number. It was a simple, almost quaint number, one that felt out of place in her fast-paced life. Mia hesitated before dialing it, the weight of the moment sinking in. When Jake answered, she hesitated for a moment. "Jake?" she asked, her voice soft. "It's Mia, from the river." There was a pause on the other end, and then Jake's warm, familiar voice replied. "Mia? Hey, I'm glad you're okay. What's up?" His casual tone made her feel at ease, but she could hear the quiet uncertainty in his voice. "I've been thinking about what you did. I don't know how to thank you," Mia said, her words sincere. "I know I already said it, but I owe you more than just a thank you." Jake chuckled softly. "You don't owe me anything. I was just in the right place at the right time." Mia felt her chest tighten. "It was more than that," she said, "and I want to see you again. Maybe we could meet for coffee, or something." Jake's surprise was palpable, though he tried to hide it. "I don't know, Mia. I mean, I'm just a guy from Virginia, you know?" Mia quickly interrupted, her voice almost pleading. "Jake, please. I'm not asking for anything more than to spend some time with you, to show my gratitude, and maybe get to know you better." There was a brief silence on the other end. Then finally, Jake agreed. "All right, I'll meet you for coffee. Same place if you want." Mia smiled, a warmth spreading through her. "I'd like that. I'll see you soon, Jake." As Mia hung up the phone, she felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She had no idea what to expect, but one thing was certain. Something was beginning to grow between them, something she hadn't anticipated. The next morning, Mia found herself back at the little cafe by the river, the same place Jake had brought her after he saved her life. She arrived early, nervously scanning the area. A few moments later, she spotted Jake walking toward her, looking as casual and unassuming as ever, in his worn jeans and plaid shirt. She stood up to greet him, her heart pounding. "Hey," Jake said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "It's good to see you again." Mia returned his smile, feeling a strange sense of calm wash over her. "It's good to see you too." They sat down at a small table by the window, and for a few moments neither of them spoke. The sound of the coffee machine whirring and the soft hum of conversation around them created a comfortable backdrop. Finally, Jake broke the silence. "So, what's it like, coming from California? I mean, that's a long way from here." Mia smiled faintly. "It's different, definitely. California is so fast-paced. Everyone's always rushing around. But here, it's nice, quiet." She paused, glancing out the window. "It feels peaceful." "I didn't expect that." Jake leaned back in his chair, intrigued. "You didn't? I figured you'd want to get back to the city life." Mia shook her head. "Not anymore. I came here to get away from all that. I needed a break." Jake studied her for a moment, his curiosity growing. "And what exactly were you trying to escape from?" Mia hesitated, her fingers playing with the edge of her coffee cup. "I don't know if I can explain it. I guess I just needed something real. Something that wasn't about money or status." Jake nodded slowly, understanding more than she realized. "I get that," he said quietly. "Sometimes, the simple things are the most real." They fell into a comfortable silence, sipping their coffee. Mia realized she had never felt so at ease with someone who came from such a different world. She had expected their differences to create a barrier, but instead, it felt like they were building a bridge between them. As the afternoon sun filtered through the windows, casting a warm glow over the cafe, Mia felt something change in her. This meeting, this unexpected connection, was only the beginning of something much deeper. As Jake and Mia continued their coffee date, the conversation drifted from one topic to another, each one more comfortable than the last. Mia had never expected to feel so at home with someone so different from her. The more they talked, the more she realized how much she appreciated Jake's genuine nature. His simplicity was refreshing, and his kindness was unlike anything she had experienced in her world of luxury and fast-paced living. Jake, for his part, found himself drawn to Mia in a way he couldn't explain. Her vulnerability, the way she spoke about wanting something more real, touched him. He had never met anyone who seemed so out of place in her own life. Despite their differences, they were beginning to find common ground. "So, tell me more about your family," Mia asked, breaking the silence between them. Jake raised an eyebrow, a little surprised by the question. "My family? Well, we're just regular folks. We've got a small farm, and my dad, he's been doing the hard work for years. My mom helps out, too, We all pitch in. He paused, taking a sip of his coffee. It's not glamorous, but it's honest work. You know, sometimes that's all we need. Mia nodded, taking in his words. That sounds nice, she said thoughtfully. It's very different from what I'm used to. My dad, well, he's always been about business, about making money. That's the world I've grown up in. Jake could see the subtle discomfort in her expression as she spoke about her father. And what about you? What do you want, Mia? He asked, his voice soft. She looked out the window for a moment, gathering her thoughts. I don't know anymore, she admitted, her voice quiet. I used to think that all I wanted was to follow in my father's footsteps, to take over his business. But something's changed. I've seen enough to know that money and success, they don't guarantee happiness. She turned back to Jake, meeting his eyes. I guess I've just been lost, trying to figure out what matters. Jake studied her for a long moment. He could tell that her words were genuine. She wasn't just a rich girl feeling sorry for herself. She was searching for meaning, just like he had been. Maybe you're just looking for the wrong thing in the wrong places, he said simply. Sometimes, what you need is already around you. Mia's heart skipped a beat at his words. There was something in his voice, something so sincere and grounded that made her feel like maybe she had been looking in the wrong places all along. They continued to talk for hours, the conversation flowing easily now. They spoke about everything and nothing at all. By the time they finished their coffee, it was late in the afternoon. The sunlight had started to fade, casting a golden glow over the small cafe. As they stepped outside, Mia felt a strange sense of calm. For the first time in a long while, she wasn't thinking about her family's expectations or the pressure to succeed. She was simply enjoying the moment. I'm glad we met, Jake, she said, her voice soft. He smiled, a small but genuine smile. Me too, Mia, me too. As they stood there for a moment, the sound of a distant car engine broke the silence. Mia glanced down the street, her heart racing as she realized something. I need to go back to my cabin, she said suddenly, her tone shifting. I've been away for too long. I have to deal with some things. Jake nodded, sensing that there was more to her sudden change of mood, but he didn't push. All right, he said, his voice steady. You take care of yourself, Mia. And remember, if you need anything, you know where to find me. She gave him a grateful smile. Thank you, Jake. I won't forget this. As she turned to walk away, Jake stood there, watching her. He knew that this wasn't the end of their story. There was something between them, something that couldn't be ignored. But Mia had her own battles to fight, and Jake couldn't rush her through that process. He only hoped that when the time came, she would find what she was looking for. Little did he know, Mia was already starting to realize that what she needed wasn't something she could buy or inherit. It was something she could only find by truly connecting with someone who understood her in a way no one else had. She had found that person in Jake, and that, in itself, was a revelation. After their meeting, Mia spent the next few days in quiet contemplation. She had returned to her cabin, as she had planned, but her thoughts kept drifting back to Jake. His words resonated deeply with her, and she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something special about him, something real. The days she had spent in Virginia had been nothing like the life she was used to in California, but they had opened her eyes to a different way of living, a simpler life, where people weren't defined by their wealth or status. As much as she tried to push it out of her mind, she couldn't help but think that maybe this was the life she had been searching for. Jake, too, couldn't stop thinking about Mia. He had always been the quiet, reserved type, content with his life and his family, but there was something about Mia that made him want to know more. He found himself wondering about her life in California, about the world she came from. Despite their differences, he felt a connection with her, and that connection had only deepened during their coffee date. But he knew she had her own struggles to face. She wasn't ready to dive into something new, especially with someone like him. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that they were somehow meant to meet. One afternoon, a few days after their meeting, Mia received a message from Jake. He was asking if she was free to meet again, to talk. Mia's heart skipped a beat. She had been hoping to see him again, but she hadn't expected him to reach out first. She quickly responded, agreeing to meet up the next day. When they met again, It was at the same cafe by the river, the place where they had shared their first real conversation. This time, the air was warmer, and the sun was high in the sky, casting a golden glow over everything. Mia was early, as usual, sitting at their usual spot by the window. She couldn't help but smile when she saw Jake walking toward her, his familiar blue jeans and plaid shirt giving him a grounded, effortless charm. "Hey," he greeted her with a smile, his voice low and calm. "It's good to see you again." "Good to see you too," Mia replied, her heart racing a little. She had no idea what was happening between them, but she couldn't deny that she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. They sat down, and the conversation started easily, as it had before. But this time, there was something different in the air, a quiet understanding between them. "So, how have you been?" Jake asked, his eyes soft but curious. "I've been okay," Mia said, hesitating for a moment. "I've been thinking a lot about what you said. About the simple things." She looked out the window, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee cup. "I think I've been chasing the wrong things for so long. Chasing something I thought I needed, but maybe I don't." Jake leaned forward slightly, his interest piqued. "What do you mean?" "I've spent my whole life trying to live up to other people's expectations," Mia admitted, her voice quieter now. "My dad's expectations, mostly. He's built this empire, and he wants me to take over, but I'm not sure that's what I want anymore." Jake nodded, understanding more than she knew. "It's hard, I bet, when the world expects one thing, and your heart wants something else." "Exactly," Mia said, her voice soft but sure. "I've always felt like I was living in his shadow, but after what happened, after meeting you, I think I've realized there's more to life than just business and success." Jake smiled, a genuine warmth in his eyes. "Sometimes, it's the simple things that make the biggest difference," he said. "Like helping someone in need, or finding someone who sees you for who you really are, not just what you have." Mia's heart swelled at his words. She felt understood, in a way she hadn't in years. "I never thought I'd meet someone like you," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Someone who gets it. Someone who isn't just looking at me for what I can do for them." Jake's expression softened, his voice steady. "Mia, I'm not here to change your life. I just want you to be happy, whatever that means for you." The weight of his words hit her, and for the first time in a long while, Mia felt a sense of peace. Maybe she didn't have to live up to anyone else's expectations. Maybe she could live for herself. And maybe, just maybe, there was a future for her and Jake. As they sat there, talking about everything and nothing, Mia realized that this was just the beginning of something new, something real. She wasn't sure where it would lead, but for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was on the right path, and that, in itself, was enough. As the weeks passed, Mia and Jake's bond grew stronger. They continued meeting at the same cafe by the river, exchanging stories and dreams. Mia had started spending more time in Virginia, finding solace in the simplicity of life there. Each visit made her more certain that she was beginning to shed the expectations that had weighed her down for so long. But while Mia was finding peace in this new life, Jake was facing his own inner turmoil. He had always been the quiet, reserved guy, never one to openly share his feelings. But with Mia, something had changed. He found himself caring more than he ever expected, and it scared him. He couldn't help but think about the future, about where this connection was headed. Was it just a fleeting moment, or was it something more? One evening, as they sat on the porch of Jake's house, the sun setting behind them, Jake decided it was time to talk. "Mia," he said softly, turning toward her, "there's something I've been meaning to ask you." Mia looked at him, her heart beating a little faster. "What is it?" I'm just trying to figure out where we stand," Jake said, his voice uncertain. "I don't want to push you or anything, but I feel like there's something between us, and I guess I just need to know if you feel the same way." Mia felt a rush of warmth in her chest at his words. She had been thinking the same thing, but hearing Jake say it out loud made it all the more real. She took a deep breath, her eyes meeting his. "Jake," she began, her voice steady, "I've been thinking about that too, and I don't want to rush into anything, but yes, I do feel the same way." Jake's expression softened, a weight lifting off his shoulders. "You do?" Mia nodded, her smile gentle. I do. I didn't think I would, but after spending so much time with you, I realized that I don't want to run away from this, from us. Jake let out a relieved laugh. Good, he said. Because I don't want to let you go. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the only sounds the soft chirping of crickets in the distance. Jake's heart felt lighter than it had in weeks, and for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was on the right path. Mia felt the same. For so long she had been living in the shadow of other people's expectations. But now, in this quiet moment, she felt free. Free to make her own choices, to live the life she wanted. She had found something real in Jake, something that no amount of wealth or success could ever replace. So, what now? Mia asked, breaking the silence. What do we do next? Jake smiled, his eyes bright with possibility. We take it one step at a time, he said. We see where this goes, together. Mia's smile matched his, and in that moment, she knew that whatever came next, they would face it together. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, Mia felt excited about it. She wasn't sure where this journey would lead, but she knew that Jake would be there by her side. And that was enough. As the evening wore on, they talked more, sharing their hopes for the future and their fears. There was no rush, no pressure, just the quiet certainty that they had found something special in each other. When Mia finally left for the night, her heart was full. She didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she felt like she was finally on the right path. And that was enough. As days turned into weeks, Mia and Jake continued to grow closer, their bond deepening with each conversation and shared experience. However, the calm of their growing relationship was soon disrupted by a sudden and unexpected turn of events. It all started one afternoon when Mia received a call from her father. Something she had been dreading but knew would eventually come. Mia, we need to talk. Her father's stern voice came through the phone. I've been reviewing the situation, and I need you to come back to California. There are some important matters to discuss. Mia hesitated, the weight of the words settling heavily on her chest. She knew what this meant. It was time for her to take her place in the family business, to step into the life she had been trying to avoid. She had been running from this responsibility, but now it seemed inevitable. Dad, I don't think I'm ready to come back, Mia said, her voice trembling slightly. I've been doing some thinking, and I'm not sure if this is the path I want to take anymore. Her father's tone shifted, becoming colder. Mia, you've had your time to explore, but you know this is your duty. You can't keep running away from it. The words cut through her, and she felt a knot form in her stomach. She had known this was coming, but hearing her father's disappointment in her voice made it feel real. I'll think about it, she said quietly, before ending the call. As she hung up the phone, a wave of dread washed over her. She had been hoping that maybe, just maybe, her new life in Virginia could be her future. But now, it seemed like she had to choose between the life her father had planned for her and the life she was beginning to build with Jake. Later that evening, Mia sat on the porch of Jake's house, the soft hum of crickets filling the air. Jake joined her, sensing that something was wrong. He sat down beside her, offering her a reassuring smile. What's on your mind? He asked gently. Mia took a deep breath, looking out at the field in front of them. It's my dad, she began, her voice wavering. He called today. He wants me to come back to California. He says it's time for me to take over the business. Jake stayed quiet, letting her speak. He had known that Mia's life in California was complicated, but hearing her talk about it now made him realize just how much pressure she had been under. I don't know what to do, Mia continued, her voice soft but filled with uncertainty. I've been trying to figure out what I really want, but it feels like I'm being pulled in two different directions. Jake turned to her, his expression serious but understanding. Mia, I know this is tough, but you have to follow your heart. If this new life here with me, in Virginia, feels right to you, then maybe it's time to put your foot down and make a choice. You're the one who has to live with it. Mia's eyes filled with tears at his words. She had been struggling with this decision for so long, but hearing Jake's support made her feel less alone. I don't want to disappoint my dad, but I don't want to lose what I've found here either, she admitted, her voice cracking. Jake reached out, gently placing his hand on hers. Mia, you don't have to choose between us. But you do need to choose what's best for you. Don't live your life for anyone else. For a long moment, they sat there in silence, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. Mia felt as though her heart was being pulled in two directions. But for the first time in a long time, she felt like she was finally starting to understand what she truly wanted. As the evening turned into night, Mia knew that she couldn't put this off any longer. She had to make a decision. She had to decide if she was going to follow the path her father had set for her, or if she was going to take a chance on something new, something real. And as she sat there beside Jake, she realized that no matter what happened next, she wasn't alone. She had someone by her side who believed in her, who saw her for who she truly was, not for the life she was expected to lead. The decision wouldn't be easy, but Mia knew it was time to take control of her own future. The following morning, Mia woke up with a sense of unease weighing heavily on her chest. Her father's call still echoed in her mind, and she couldn't shake the feeling that the decision she had to make would change her life forever. As she sat on the porch of Jake's house, the crisp morning air filling her lungs, she thought about everything that had brought her here. She thought about her family, her father's expectations, and the life she had been living in California, a life she was now questioning. More than anything, she thought about Jake, the one person who had shown her a different way of living, a life that didn't revolve around business or money. Jake had given her a glimpse of something real, and it had felt like a breath of fresh air. She couldn't ignore that. Mia had spent her whole life trying to please others, trying to fit into a mold that wasn't hers. But now, for the first time, she was beginning to see that she had the power to choose her own path. It wasn't going to be easy, but the thought of walking away from everything she had known to be with Jake, the thought of living a life for herself felt right. That morning, as the sun rose higher in the sky, Mia made a decision. She would take control of her future, no longer bound by her father's expectations or the life he had planned for her. She had been running from this moment for so long, but now it was time to face it head-on. Mia's heart raced as she called her father. The phone rang twice before he answered. "Mia," her father's voice was sharp, impatient. "I've been waiting to hear from you. Have you made up your mind?" Mia took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had never felt more certain of anything in her life. "Dad, I've made my decision," she said, her voice firm. "I'm not coming back. I'm staying here, in Virginia." There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and Mia's stomach tightened. She could feel the weight of her father's disappointment, but she held her ground. "This is my choice," she continued, her voice unwavering. "I need to live my own life, on my own terms. I can't keep doing what you want me to do. I have to figure out what makes me happy." Her father's voice was cold when he spoke again. "You're making a mistake, Mia. You'll regret this. You'll see." "Maybe," Mia said, her heart pounding. "But I have to try. I can't keep living in your shadow. I have to find my own way." The silence that followed was deafening. Mia could hear her father's heavy breathing, and for a moment, she thought he might say something more. But then, he simply hung up the phone. Mia stared at the device in her hand for a moment, the weight of her decision sinking in. She had done it. She had stood up for herself, and for the first time, she felt free. She felt like she could breathe. Later that day, Mia met Jake at their usual cafe by the river. She hadn't told him yet about her decision, and she knew it was time. As they sat down at the same table by the window, Jake noticed the change in her demeanor. "You okay?" he asked, concern in his voice. Mia smiled at him, her heart feeling lighter than it had in weeks. "Yeah, I'm more than okay," she said softly. "I made a decision." Jake leaned forward, waiting for her to continue. "I talked to my dad today," she said, "and I told him I'm staying here, in Virginia. I'm not going back to California." Jake's eyes widened, a mixture of surprise and admiration in his gaze. "Mia, that's huge," he said, his voice full of warmth. "I'm proud of you." Mia smiled, feeling a weight lift off her shoulders. "I didn't think I could do it," she admitted, "but I realized that I have to live for myself, not for anyone else." Jake reached across the table, gently taking her hand in his. "You've made the right choice, Mia. I'm glad you're here." Mia's heart swelled at his words, and she knew, in that moment, that everything was falling into place. The path ahead wouldn't be easy, but it would be her path. She would face whatever came her way, with Jake by her side. As they sat there, hand in hand, Mia felt more certain than ever that this was the life she was meant to live. A life filled with choices that were her own, not dictated by anyone else. And with Jake, she was ready to take the next step, together. As Mia and Jake's lives intertwined more deeply, their connection grew stronger, but the road ahead was still filled with obstacles. While Mia had made her decision to stay in Virginia, she knew it wouldn't be easy to break away from the life her father had planned for her. The weight of her decision hung over her as she navigated the next few weeks. She was constantly torn between the life she was beginning to build with Jake and the looming responsibilities that called her back to California. She had put up a brave front, but in moments of quiet, doubts crept into her mind. What would her family say? Would her decision be a mistake? And would she ever truly feel like she belonged in this simpler life with Jake, away from the glittering world of business and wealth that had always surrounded her? One afternoon, as Mia was lost in her thoughts at the small cottage she had rented near Jake's house, her phone rang. It was a number she knew well, her father's. Her heart skipped a beat. Taking a deep breath, she answered. Mia. Her father's voice was colder than usual. I've been speaking to your mother. We're both very disappointed in your decision. You've abandoned the family business, and frankly, I can't understand why you're throwing away everything we've worked for. Mia's stomach twisted as she listened to his harsh words. It hurt to hear him speak this way, but she couldn't let his disappointment sway her now. I haven't abandoned anything, Dad, she said, her voice steady despite the sting. I've made a choice for myself. I want to build my own life, not live the one you planned for me. There was a long pause on the other end, and when her father spoke again, his voice softened, almost pleading. Mia, please understand. This is your future. You can't just walk away from everything. I've made arrangements for you to come back, to take over the business, and you're going to let all that go for. For what? For me, Mia answered, her voice more sure now. For the life I want. I don't want to follow a path I never chose. I want to be my own person, not just your daughter or a replacement for your legacy. Her father didn't reply right away, and for a moment, Mia wondered if she had made a terrible mistake. But then, her father spoke again, this time with a tone of resignation. You've made your choice, he said, his voice almost a whisper. But know this, Mia. I can't support you in this. You're on your own. The call ended abruptly, leaving Mia with a sense of finality. Her father's words hit her hard, but deep down, she knew it was the right decision. She couldn't let fear or guilt control her any longer. She had to trust herself. As the days passed, Mia focused on building her new life with Jake. They spent more time together, taking long walks through the countryside and sharing their dreams about the future. Mia found solace in the quiet moments, in the simple joys of everyday life. She started working at a local art gallery, something she had always wanted to do but had never had the courage to pursue. Jake supported her every step of the way, encouraging her to follow her passions. It felt like the world was opening up in ways she had never imagined. But just when things seemed to be falling into place, Mia received another call, this time from her mother. The voice on the other end was softer than her father's, but Mia could still hear the concern. Mia, I know things have been difficult between you and your father, but please, come home. You don't have to take over the business, but at least consider coming back for a visit. We're worried about you. Mia closed her eyes, the weight of her mother's words pressing down on her. She loved her family, but she knew she couldn't go back to the life they had planned for her. I'm sorry, Mom, Mia said, her voice full of emotion. I can't come back. I have to keep going on this path, even if it means being alone for a while. There was a long pause before her mother replied, her voice trembling. I understand, Mia. Just promise me one thing. Don't lose yourself in all of this. You're still our daughter, no matter what. Mia's heart ached as she hung up the phone. She knew her family loved her, but she also knew that she had to prioritize her own happiness. She couldn't keep living for their expectations. As Mia sat there in the quiet of the cottage, she realized how much she had changed. The road ahead would still be difficult, but she was no longer afraid of making choices for herself. She had chosen this life with Jake, a life of possibility and freedom, and she was determined to see it through. When Jake came over later that day, Mia didn't hesitate. She told him everything, the calls, the pressure, and her decision to move forward, no matter the cost. Jake took her hands in his, looking at her with understanding and love. "Whatever comes, Mia, we'll face it together," he said softly. "This is your life, and I'll be here for every step of it." Mia smiled, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't known before. She knew the road ahead wouldn't always be easy, but with Jake by her side, she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As the weeks passed, Mia's life in Virginia began to feel more like home. The gallery where she had started working became a source of both peace and excitement. She was surrounded by beautiful art and creative minds. And for the first time, she felt like she was truly following her passion. With Jake by her side, everything seemed to fall into place. Despite the occasional phone call from her parents, Mia felt more grounded than ever. But just when things were settling into a new rhythm, a new challenge appeared. One afternoon, as Mia was getting ready for work, she received an unexpected message from her mother. It was a text, something short and to the point, but the words sent a chill down her spine. "Your father wants to talk. It's urgent. Please come to California." The message had come out of nowhere, and Mia's heart began to race. She hadn't spoken to her father since the last call where she had stood her ground, and she had been avoiding the subject of returning home. Her mother's plea for her to come back only made things more complicated. Mia had thought she was free from the pressure, but now it seemed like the past was pulling her back in. She couldn't ignore the message, so she decided to make the trip to California. Jake, sensing the change in her mood, noticed her hesitation. "What's wrong, Mia?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. Mia took a deep breath, holding the phone in her hands. "It's my father. He wants to talk. I don't know why, but I feel like something's wrong." Jake gave her a reassuring smile. "You don't have to go alone, you know. I can come with you if you need support." Mia smiled softly, appreciating his offer, but she knew this was something she had to face on her own. "Thank you, Jake, but this is something I have to do. I just need to figure things out for myself." The day of the trip arrived, and Mia felt a mixture of anxiety and resolve as she boarded the plane to California. The flight was long, and she spent the entire time staring out the window, replaying the events in her mind. When the plane landed, she found herself standing at the entrance of her family's estate once again, a place she hadn't set foot in for weeks. The air felt heavier now, as if the weight of her past was pressing down on her. Her mother greeted her with a warm but concerned smile, and they exchanged pleasantries, but Mia could feel the tension in the air. "Where's Dad?" Mia asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. "He's waiting for you inside," her mother replied softly, her eyes filled with unspoken worry. Mia nodded, her stomach in knots as she walked into the grand house. She could hear the sound of her father's voice before she even saw him, a voice she had spent so many years trying to meet expectations for. When she finally stepped into the study, her father looked up at her, his expression unreadable. He didn't smile, but his eyes softened when they met hers. "Mia," he said, his voice colder than usual. "I'm glad you came." Mia stood there, unsure of what to say, but she knew this conversation was inevitable. "What is it, Dad? What's going on?" she asked, her voice steady, though her heart was pounding in her chest. Her father's gaze grew more serious, and he gestured for her to sit. "I've been thinking a lot about your decision to stay in Virginia, about the life you've chosen, and I've come to realize that maybe I've been too hard on you. I've always wanted what's best for you, but I see now that you need to make your own choices, even if it's not the life I envisioned for you." Mia's heart skipped a beat. This wasn't the conversation she had expected. Her father, the man who had always pushed her to take over the family business, was now offering something she hadn't imagined, a form of acceptance. "I'm not asking you to come back, Mia," he continued, his voice softening. "But I want you to know that I'm proud of you for making a choice for yourself. Just don't forget who you are and where you come from." Mia was speechless for a moment, her mind spinning. Her father had always been distant, focused on his legacy, but now, for the first time, she saw a crack in that rigid exterior. She felt a wave of relief wash over her. "Thank you, Dad," she said quietly. "I needed to hear that." Her father nodded, a faint smile appearing on his face. "I may not understand everything, but I know you're strong enough to figure it out." After the conversation, Mia felt lighter, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. She had come to California expecting to fight for her choices, but instead, she had found understanding. She realized that while her father may never fully accept her decision, he had given her the freedom to live her life as she saw fit. Mia left the house with a sense of closure, her heart feeling more at peace than it had in a long time. As she boarded the plane back to Virginia, she knew that no matter what came next, she had chosen the life she wanted. With Jake by her side and her future ahead of her, Mia was ready to face whatever challenges life would throw her way. As Mia returned to Virginia after her conversation with her father, a sense of peace began to settle within her. The decision to stay, to carve out a new life for herself, had been difficult, but it was hers. She had chosen a path that was hers to walk, free from the expectations that had once bound her. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she felt a quiet strength within her, one that had grown from the struggles she had faced. The days following her return felt like a new beginning. She spent more time with Jake, their bond growing deeper with each passing day. They took long walks along the river, sharing their hopes and fears for the future. Mia felt as though she was finally discovering who she truly was, separate from the roles she had played for so long. But even as things seemed to fall into place, life had a way of throwing challenges their way. One evening, as they sat together in the small farmhouse Jake called home, there was a knock on the door. Jake rose to answer it, his brow furrowing as he saw who stood on the other side. It was a man in a suit, holding a briefcase. "Can I help you?" Jake asked, his voice cautious. The man smiled politely, though there was an edge to his demeanor. "Are you Jake Matthews?" he asked. "I am," Jake replied, unsure of what to expect. "I'm James Dalton, from the Dalton and Henson law firm. I've been instructed to deliver this to you." The man handed Jake the briefcase and quickly left without another word. Jake stood there, staring at the briefcase in his hands, his heart racing. Mia, sensing his tension, walked over to him. "What is it?" she asked softly. "I don't know," Jake said, his voice tight. He opened the briefcase, finding a stack of legal documents inside. As he flipped through them, his face grew pale. This is from my father's estate," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What does it say?" Mia asked, her concern deepening. "It's a letter, a will," Jake replied. "Apparently, I'm being called to settle some things. I'm supposed to go to a meeting in a few days." Mia could see the anxiety on his face. She had never seen Jake like this before. "Jake, you don't have to do this if you're not ready," she said, her voice filled with empathy. Jake shook his head, clearly conflicted. "I don't know what's in these papers, but it looks like my father had unfinished business with me." He let out a heavy sigh, then turned to Mia. "I've spent my whole life trying to ignore the things he left behind, but now, it looks like I don't have a choice." Mia placed a hand on his arm, her touch grounding him. "Whatever happens, I'm here for you," she said, her voice full of reassurance. "You don't have to go through this alone." Jake smiled faintly at her words, grateful for her support. "Thank you," he said quietly. "I'm not sure what this meeting will be about, but I know I don't want to face it without you." In the days that followed, Mia and Jake prepared for the meeting with Jake's father's lawyer. The weight of the past hung over them, but they faced it together, side by side. When the day finally came, they drove to the law firm, the tension thick in the air. As they entered the sleek office building, Jake's nerves were on edge. He had never liked dealing with legal matters, especially not with the baggage that came with his father's legacy. Inside the office, they were greeted by James Dalton, the same man who had delivered the briefcase. "Mr. Matthews," he said with a polite nod. "Thank you for coming." Jake nodded, his jaw tight. "Let's get this over with," he muttered under his breath. The lawyer led them into a conference room where a set of documents lay on the table. As they sat down, the lawyer began to explain the contents of the will. "Your father left instructions for you to settle some of his affairs," Dalton began. "He wanted you to have full control of his estate, but there are some conditions attached." Jake felt a wave of unease wash over him. "Conditions?" he repeated, his voice betraying his nervousness. Dalton nodded. "Yes. Your father was very specific in his wishes. The estate is yours, but there are some terms you must meet in order to claim it." Jake's mind raced as he listened to the lawyer explain the terms of his father's will. He had expected a financial settlement, perhaps even some burden of responsibility, but he hadn't anticipated the emotional weight that came with it. "I'll do whatever it takes," Jake said, his voice firm. He knew that this was the final piece of the puzzle. His father's legacy had always been something he had avoided, but now it was time to face it. Mia looked at him, her eyes full of understanding. She knew this was a pivotal moment for Jake, and she would be there every step of the way. As the meeting concluded, Jake signed the documents, a sense of finality settling over him. The past was no longer something he could ignore. It was time to take control of his own future, just as Mia had done with hers. Together, they left the office, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They knew that the road would not be easy, but with each other's support, they could overcome anything. As the weeks went by, Jake and Mia settled into a rhythm that felt both comfortable and exciting. They had faced the uncertainty of their futures and the pressure of their pasts, but now they were moving forward together. Jake had signed the legal papers related to his father's estate, but the weight of his inheritance and the responsibility that came with it still loomed over him. He was determined to make things right, not just for himself, but for the future he and Mia were building together. One evening, as they sat on the porch of Jake's house, the fading sunlight casting long shadows across the yard, Mia looked at him, sensing the tension that still lingered in his eyes. "You okay?" she asked softly, her voice laced with concern. Jake nodded, but there was a faint unease in his expression. "Yeah, just a lot to process. I never thought I'd be dealing with all this, especially not now." Mia placed her hand on his, offering him a comforting smile. "I know it's a lot, but you don't have to go through it alone. You've already taken the first step. You're facing it head on, and that's what matters." Jake met her gaze, his expression softening. "I don't know what I would have done without you," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "You've been my rock through all of this." Mia's heart swelled at his words. "You're my rock too, Jake," she said quietly. "We're in this together. Whatever happens next, we'll face it side by side." The reassurance in her voice seemed to ease some of the tension in Jake's shoulders, and he gave her a small smile. As the evening wore on, they talked more about the future, about the dreams they each had, and how they could make those dreams a reality together. Mia's decision to stay in Virginia, to carve out a life for herself separate from her father's expectations, had led her to a place she never thought possible. For the first time, she was living for herself, and with Jake by her side, she felt like anything was possible. The next day, Jake received another letter from the lawyer. This time, it wasn't just about the estate, it was about the future. The letter contained details about the business dealings his father had left behind, and the reality of the inheritance Jake had inherited. As he read through the documents, the weight of his responsibilities began to settle in. His father had left him more than just material wealth. He had left him a business empire, with assets and decisions that would need to be handled carefully. It was overwhelming, but Jake knew it was a responsibility he couldn't shy away from. He had made peace with the fact that he would never be able to please his father, but he could still honor his legacy in a way that was true to him. Later that evening, after Jake had spent hours reading through the legal papers, he sat down with Mia. She could see the exhaustion in his eyes, but she also saw the determination. "So, what now?" she asked gently, sitting beside him on the couch. Jake sighed, rubbing his temples. "I don't know. There's so much to take in. But I know one thing: I'm not going to let this define me. I'll handle it, but I won't let it take over my life." Mia nodded in understanding, her heart swelling with pride for the man beside her. "You've already made the hardest part of the decision, Jake. You've decided to move forward, to take control of your own future. That's the most important thing." Jake looked at her, his expression filled with gratitude. "I don't know what I'd do without you, Mia. You're the reason I'm able to face all this." Mia smiled softly. "We're a team, remember?" The next few weeks were filled with meetings and decisions as Jake worked to take control of his father's business empire. He wasn't alone. Mia stood by him, offering her support, her wisdom, and her unwavering belief in him. Together, they navigated the challenges that came with Jake's inheritance, and slowly but surely, they started to make changes that aligned with their shared vision of the future. Jake was determined to leave his father's legacy behind on his own terms, and Mia was there every step of the way, helping him turn the page on a new chapter. One afternoon, as Jake sat at his desk in the small office he had set up to manage the business, Mia walked in with a warm cup of coffee. She smiled as she placed it in front of him, noticing the exhaustion in his eyes. "You've been working non-stop," she said softly, sitting down next to him. "You need a break." Jake smiled gratefully, taking the coffee. "I know, I want to make sure everything is done right. But I'm getting there." Mia reached out, gently taking his hand in hers. "You've already done so much. The rest can wait. Let's take some time for ourselves, okay?" Jake looked at her, his heart swelling with gratitude. "I don't deserve you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. Mia smiled, her heart full. "You don't have to deserve me, Jake. I'm here because I want to be." And in that moment, as they sat together, Jake realized something: he was no longer just living for his father's approval or for the expectations of the past. He was building a future that was entirely his own, with Mia by his side. The future was uncertain, but together, they were ready to face whatever came their way. As the seasons changed in Virginia, so did Jake and Mia's life together. What had started as a simple decision to stay in Virginia had transformed into a beautiful, unpredictable journey that neither of them could have predicted. After months of hard work and reflection, Jake had fully taken control of his father's business, but he had done so on his own terms. He chose to focus on what mattered most to him, building something that would honor his father's legacy, but also allow him to live a life he could call his own. With Mia by his side, he felt a sense of peace and purpose that he had never known before. As the months passed, Mia found herself thriving in her new life, no longer burdened by the weight of her father's expectations. The gallery work that she had started was now her passion, and her art was starting to get noticed. She had found a sense of belonging in Virginia, a place that had initially felt foreign to her. She was becoming the person she had always wanted to be: someone who made decisions for herself, not for anyone else. One evening, after a long day of meetings and work, Jake and Mia sat together on the porch of their home, the warmth of the summer evening surrounding them. Jake had been reflecting on everything that had led him to this point, and for the first time in his life, he truly felt content. "Mia," he said softly, his voice carrying the weight of everything he was feeling, "I can't believe how far we've come. I don't think I could have done any of this without you." Mia looked at him, her heart full. She had seen him struggle, seen him face his past and overcome it. She had watched him find his way, and in doing so, he had shown her what it meant to truly live for yourself. "I'm just glad we're here, Jake," she said, her voice warm. "We've made it through everything, together, and now we get to build the life we want." Jake smiled, squeezing her hand gently. "I never thought I'd be here in this place with you. It's more than I could have hoped for." They sat in silence for a moment, the only sounds, the chirping of crickets and the soft rustle of leaves in the breeze. Mia leaned her head against Jake's shoulder, feeling a deep sense of peace. The road had been long, filled with challenges and hard choices. But now, as they looked out at the life they had built, it all seemed worth it. Mia thought about the future, about what it might hold for them. They were no longer two people pulled in different directions, but two souls working toward the same goal, building a future full of love, passion, and fulfillment. It wasn't perfect, and they knew there would be more challenges ahead. But they also knew that they had each other, and that was enough. As the stars began to appear in the sky, Mia turned to Jake, her smile bright. "You know," she said, "I think we finally found our way." Jake looked at her, his eyes filled with love and gratitude. "Yeah, I think we have." The future wasn't something they could predict, but it was something they were ready to face, hand in hand. With Jake's business now running on his own terms and Mia's art career taking off, they were finally free to live the life they had always dreamed of. They had each other, and together, they had everything they needed to create the future they both deserved. In that quiet moment, with the stars above them and the life they had built surrounding them, they both knew one thing for certain. They had found what they were looking for, not in money, not in success, but in each other, and that was enough. In this captivating millionaire story, a young woman from a wealthy family decides to leave behind the expectations that have been placed on her and build a new life in a quiet Virginia town. She meets a humble, hardworking man who shows her a different way of living, one that is rooted in authenticity and simplicity. As they face challenges, including family pressure and the inheritance of a business empire, they discover that the true riches in life are not found in wealth, but in love, freedom, and following their own paths. This millionaire story is a testament to the power of choice, personal growth, and the strength found in relationships. Join Mia and Jake as they navigate their way through difficult decisions, finding the courage to pursue their dreams while confronting the legacies of their pasts. These millionaire stories not only highlight the challenges of wealth and expectation, but also emphasize the importance of living for oneself and creating a life filled with true happiness. If you're a fan of millionaire stories that explore deep, emotional journeys, this tale of love and self-discovery is sure to inspire you. With the twists and turns of family expectations, business legacies, and personal fulfillment, this is a millionaire story like no other, where the greatest treasure is found in the pursuit of happiness and the freedom to choose your own future.